Hello on the Rockers. We are kicking off the Halloween season with Hollywood's modern-day exorcist and author, Rachel Stavis. Forget what you think you know about exorcism and demons. She's here to spill the tea on it all, with over 10,000 cases under her belt, by the way. With my guest co-host, actor and nightlife personality, Michael Vega, who may have a little bruja in him. Who knows? And me, your sassy host with the sassy most. Raise a glass, let the drinks begin. It's On the Rocks. We're bringing the spirits to the spirits.
Life is a banquet, and most poor suckers are starving to death.
I'd like to propose a toast.
This is On the Rocks with Alexander, where I drink with your favorite celebrities as we talk about fashion, entertainment, pop culture, reality TV, and, well, that's about it. So pop a cork, lean back, and raise a glass to On the Rocks.
Fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Lord have mercy, buns and bows and pantyhose. On the Rocks podcast, the place where we're too glam to give a damn. Send your thoughts and prayers for today because we have no idea where the show is going to go today. We got all your fan questions, so we will get to as many as we can. On the Rocks, on the road. Yes, we have finished our 10th city in 2-month summer tour without at the fair, but we are coming to Palm Springs for Halloween. Come to the Arena's block party with thousands of partygoers with headliner Grammy Award-winning Motown legend Thelma Houston, and I will be your MC for the night. Go to HalloweenPalmSprings.com for tickets and info. Make sure you get the VIP tickets because you get to hang out backstage with me and the celebs and an open bar. And Go-Go Boys. Okay. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at On The Rocks on Air and on Facebook, On The Rocks Radio Show. Send me an email. Book me for a pride, wedding, funeral, quinceañera, bris, seance. I don't care. I'll show up. Info at OnTheRocksRadioShow.com. Send us your comments, your guest requests. And like I said, we got your guest questions. The show's presented by Straw Hit Media. You can watch our now over 386 episodes for free at OnTheRocksRadioShow.com. You can watch us on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV on the Outlet.tv app, Facebook Watch, streaming with Pride on SVTV and on Channel 31 on the East Coast. Hello, East Coast. We proudly tape at UBN Go Studios, your one-stop place for podcasting. Let's get the show on the road. Returning to On the Rocks, Michael Vega has worn many hats as an actor in his 25-year career. He's appeared in dozens of stage productions in San Francisco, New York, and Los Angeles, as well as several TV and film appearances. In addition to acting, he's also a fixture in West Hollywood nightlife. Please welcome back Michael Vega. Do you like the Halloween pictures that I chose?
Yeah. Like the Halloween pictures. Fixture. And I love that label.
Yeah, why not? You're a fixture. You're a socialite.
Vega fixture.
Vega fixture. All right. You know, we talk about reality TV. We talk about what's on TV. We talk about West Hollywood gossip. Why don't the gays talk about paranormal and supernatural things? We don't talk about grief. We don't talk about life after death. And we certainly don't talk about paranormal. Why?
Well, that's a stumper right there.
We're getting started, girl. We're getting started.
I mean, we live in our own reality of our own making. You know, in nightlife. So I'm thinking, it just becomes whatever the individual wants to make it. So why I don't.
But are we so?
That was such a like.
But are we so concerned with our selfies on our social media that we're not thinking about life after death, or we're afraid to talk about
absolutely
bigger
not thinking
subjects?
About death or getting older. I mean,
yeah.
Come on. I mean, I just had a birthday and. You start doing the number game of I'm closer to this age than I am to that age, and it just you stew in it, and then we judge ourselves on how old we are.
Yeah.
I mean, look at our we're a twink or we're a twunk or we're a this or we're a that.
But then you're a daddy by 32.
Well, I should be
That's
dead.
Unfair. I'm a ghoul. I'm a gay ghoul. Boo.
I'm not really here.
Yeah. Well, and it's what else reminds us of our age is when figures that we grow up with that we always assume are going to be around, like Maggie Smith, like James Earl Jones, they're just our constants.
Oh, like
And when they go, it's like, wait, what?
When I got to a certain age and started seeing, it was pop stars for me.
Yeah.
George Michael and Whitney and Prince, and I thought, wow, I felt like my childhood was dying as these people were falling off, and it's just so bizarre to me. And with the Maggie Smith, he's so much older, but it's the younger ones.
Yeah.
I remember I had a really hard time when River Phoenix died. Because
that was a tragedy, totally unexpected.
Absolutely, but
yeah.
he was around the same age I was, so it just put mortality to the front of my mind, and I started, that got me thinking, oh my God, time is limited. You can just go like that. If this big, talented star who, I aspire to be, which,
right.
ain't gonna do that.
Now, what is your personal relationship with the paranormal? And we're going to talk about how religion doesn't really play a part in exorcism, which is odd to say. Well, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But how? Because we both come from Latin culture, which is very steeped in superstition, even Catholic superstition. It's like, okay, calm down with your rosary, but that's part of how we were raised. What's been your kind of relationship with otherworldly stuff?
Well, I was thinking about that. There's a lot of stuff that sort of, you get to a certain age and some childhood memories are just peripheral. You just see the sort of outline of a memory and you wonder, did that really happen or am I just dreaming it? And there are a few reoccurring things. I know there were some Santeria things growing up that I can't explain, that my mother's never really explained. I remember an incident of chicken bones on our front porch, and it was a big deal, and I had no idea why, never really asked. There is one reoccurring thing, and my mother can't even explain, but I must have been 3 or 4, and I remember that there was a couch that was placed against a closet. Right?
No,
okay,
ma'am.
Start there. And
Every horror film has that.
I know. I just got chills on my thighs. And I remember there was some warm laundry, and I put my hand underneath the laundry because it was, warm and it smelled like dryer sheets. And I remember feeling a sort of hand pulling me a little bit. And it's one of those memories where, did that really happen? Like, why is that from being so young still with me?
Yeah.
But as clear as day, it's there. Just a feeling of, sort of towards the closet. You have the couch, but it just sort of towards the closet.
Yeah.
And
Well, we're going to talk about sleep paralysis too, because I'm affected every 6 months by sleep paralysis in such a bad way. But when I'm in it, it's 100% real. It's physical. I've had things move. I've been touched. I've been forced. I've been all these things. But then when you really think about it, you're like, I must have just been dreaming, even though at the moment it's 100% for real and you're totally sentient. So we're going to talk about how that all plays. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
All right, let's dive right in with our lady of the hour. Rachel Stavis is the best-selling author of Sister of Darkness, The Chronicles of a Modern Exorcist, now in development as a major motion picture, by the way. She's a healer and an exorcist. She has removed energy blockages and has spiritually cleaned, non-denominationally, by the way, or rather poly-denominational. We're going to talk about that. Not tied to any one religion. She's helped more than 10,000 clients to date, from rock icons to Oscar winners, from politicians to members of the royal family, from cult survivors to couples with infertility issues, young and old, extreme cases and mild ones, helped with addiction issues. She's also worked on several film sets to help clear the negative energy, and she's worked on behind the scenes on many TV shows with producers, with cast, which is very well detailed in her book, and we're going to talk about that, to really clear negative energy. You name it, she's been called in to do it. Without further ado, please welcome the exorcist next door, Rachel Stavis.
Hello. That's quite an intro. And also, whenever I hear someone say over 10,000 cases, it makes me dizzy.
I can't even imagine because, and you talk about in your book, the amount of energy that goes into having an exorcism, the period of time after. 10,000?
It's mind-blowing to me. I don't even know. How did that happen?
Well, and your book opens with a very extreme case, and it deals with a very small child, which is which is horrific. We've seen movies like The Exorcist that deals with child possession, but when you put it into real world words, it takes on a whole kind of different severity and kind of an emotional journey as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And like you said, I'm not the church. I don't work in the way that the church does. And in fact, with that particular case that's in the book, it was a family who their child was seeing things and hearing things, and things were moving around in the house and no one was okay. And they had gone to the church first, and the church goes through a checklist of things where they're like, okay, does it fit all of these requirements, which, for them it has to. And they believed that this child was lying. And I can see entity with my eyes. I was born with the ability to see entity with my eyes. And so they came to me, a very Hollywood way, by the way. They worked for someone who was a producer somewhere who was in touch with my manager at the time. So my manager got a call saying hey, does she do this for people? Can we go? But anyway, aside from that, they came and I could see the entity, so I knew she wasn't lying, and definitely gave her a cleansing, an exorcism. and the family has been in touch with me for, I don't even know, many years now, and she's still doing well.
Does entity, does it follow? Because when I hear stories about hauntings or possessions, I think just get out of the house, just leave, move, go somewhere else, but I imagine it's something that would follow, or
it was an attachment, so it was a possession. So
Okay.
yeah, with that particular case, that was not attached to a house; that was attached to the child. And the difference between hauntings and possession is that ghosts can't really possess you. That is something that people love to talk about, like perpetuate that this happens all the time. They don't really do that. They can just be annoying. And they can be really annoying. Like deceased people, like I always say, deceased people don't shut up. They really can be annoying. Whereas entity is who possesses. The only time that is different is like, as you were talking about in Santeria or things like that, when you're having a religious situation where you're inviting ancestral spirits to come in. But even then, it's momentary. It's not continuous.
We're going to get into the nitty-gritty about your own personal journey, but we got so many different questions worded differently, and so I wanted to start the show off to kind of ward off certain assumptions. So, because people hear exorcism, and we're taught that demons and entities are from this Christian-based idea of hell. Can you talk about those religious assumptions and what the reality of an actual demon or entity is?
Yeah, so, I mean, entities do come from a space that is not our own. Is it hell? I can't really say because I didn't go visit them there. But they come from another realm, whatever that is, and they pass through here, and then they come here to feed, to attach to people and to feed. It's not based on whether you are religious or have lost your religion or whatever, like we always see in movies, which we're changing, by the way, because we're starting to tell different stories about exorcism now. But that is kind of what we've always seen. And it's about Jesus or about religion, mostly Catholicism, Christianity, that kind of stuff. The reality is that entities are low frequency. So we all kind of walk around with what I call a baseline frequency. That's kind of where we are in the world, how we talk to ourselves, how we talk to others, how conscious we are, how we treat ourselves, how we treat others, how kind we are. All of that factors in, as cheesy as that sounds. So most people, I always say, like, if 10 is Buddha and 1 is dead, most people are like at a 4 or 4.5. It's not quite great. It's certainly not high frequency, but it's like, all right, when we work on ourselves, that goes up. It takes time. When we have a trauma of some kind, it can really go down because we really are not taught in this culture how to deal with that energetically, spiritually, let's say. Even mentally, right? Like we tell people to suck it up and get over it, and that's not what happens. So when we take an energetic hit, that's how entity attaches, because they're looking for a specific low frequency feed that matches their own. That's why they can't, like, again, in movies, how we've seen move from person to person to person to person. That's not true unless everyone in the room somehow had a very similar energetic presence. So it's not based on religion at all. It's actually based on energy, and that's how everything works. And, just a side note, most of the things we see about possession and exorcism are about the church, but it didn't start there. We've had exorcism and possession since ancient times and ancient cultures, and there are many, many cultures that have whatever you want to call it, some high priests, some witch doctors, some shamans, some everybody else that takes things out, so we just, they've kind of just co-opted it a bit.
Well, it's funny, like you said, every religion has an exorcist practice in place. There's a handbook, there's a manual.
Yes.
The Vatican first created one in like 1614, and then they updated it in 1999, right before the millennial change. But it's like, what was going on through the Vatican's mind, or what was happening with possessions and actual exorcisms? They were like, we need to update this handbook.
Honestly, they amped up.
Fear-mongering.
No, they amped up. We had more negative energy on the planet, and it's gotten increasingly worse. And there were more people complaining to the church about needing exorcisms, and so they needed to train more priests And that's what happened. So when you train more priests, you kind of have to update what you're looking for the times, right? And so they had to change how they were viewing the practice and how they were going to decide who needs one versus, let's call it mental health or whatever else, which, by the way, is not exclusionary.
Well, and when we talk, like some of the comments I got was, the minute you go in to talk about demonology, it's blasphemous. It's going against religion. Saying that you're non-denominational, that's not quite right, because you use the tools of whoever you're helping, whatever they respond to, but you're using the tools that come to you, and you've had experiences with anything from angel presences to God type figures, to even religious figures. They've all come together to help you with your rituals. So it's not non-denominational. It's
multi.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is more multi, because I work with high beings. High beings are what people consider angels, spirit guides, ancestors, master teachers. Like, these are all considered high beings. God, if you will, universe, spirit, all the same. So I do work with a multitude of high beings from many cultures, many practices, certainly not just Catholicism, but even paganism, is everything, like who I call in is crazy. But these are the high beings that I've created a relationship with over the years. And so these are the ones that I work with the most. When people come in, I have had many different clients who've had certain religious upbringings or religious upbringings or religious cult upbringings that have come in and been very fearful to do the working because of where they come from, and they've broken out of those things and don't want to return there. But they may have a relationship to Archangel Michael, let's say, and they feel like, okay, well, that was always good for me. So that might be something that we call in during that time as well. Sometimes we even call in people's deceased loved ones to help, because that is part of the working too, especially if the deceased loved one feels or thinks that they are responsible for what's going on here. They will come in. So it gets crazy. Like we're all over the map in terms of who comes in to help. But yeah, it's an experience. And some people get really mad when you talk about this. I mean, I get death threats all the time. Let me just put that in perspective. Because I say very consistently, all high beings work together. There's no religious framework here. They're not going to not work on you because you come from this background. That's not how it works. And so, like, super religious people get very offended by that.
Do you get messages when you're not asking for them, and then you just keep them? If you come across a person and spirit gives you a sort of message, do you feel compelled to share it with that person?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Listen, I'm not Tyler Henry, right? So when you're a medium and you get messages randomly walking around, they're usually nice. Like, they're usually messages where people won't be offended or upset if you approach them and say, listen, just side note, your grandma came through and here's what she has to say. And then everybody's crying and hugging and feeling good. For me, it's like, oh, there's an entity attachment. Let's talk about the thing that happened to you when you were 5. It's not really well received most of the time. So I don't get my flowers for that, so I don't really do it that much.
I see.
The only time that I will do it is like in a setting like this, if, something came through and we were having an open conversation about that, then I could be like, listen, I'm not going to get into details, but here is something that came through. So like when you were talking about your couch and you're being pulled underneath, you can ask if your mom will talk about it, but it seems like something happened where they did a ritual to bring in ancestors and something else came through. So they had to do something to clear that out, and it took its time.
I asked that question because a few days ago, I was behind the bar, and there was a woman who was there with her son. She was probably a bit older than me. She was by my bar, and I saw she just kept looking over a few times, and then came to me and sort of I'm pouring drinks and grabbed my wrist, not forcibly, but had to tell me something. And she mentioned my energy and my light. And then a couple of other times, she just kept coming back and saying, you don't have to, you can rest now. you don't have to come back. And she was talking about reincarnation, that you've learned everything you need to learn. And I'm just like, okay.
But those are nice messages.
They are, but I'm still thinking, do you want a lime in that? I don't, but I'm just.
Yeah, you have to want it. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
because if you're a psychic medium, which maybe that woman was, right? So she was just getting these nice hits that she
had a
could
few,
tell you.
probably. Yeah.
And I'll tell you the truth. When I do something, I can't control much of what comes out. I won't just say it. But if someone asks, I'm going to be like, and here's your life story, and here's what happened here. And you remember that time you did this? Okay, cool. And people will sob. So I try not to do it unless you want it. But like, if you have good messages to share, I think people are very receptive to that. But coming from being the person who sees the worst of everyone first before I even know their name, I can see everything terrible that's ever happened to you and everything terrible you might have done. I am used to keeping my mouth shut unless someone's like, I really want to know why this happened, or I really have questions about this, you know?
Now let's talk about your connection with demons or entities, whatever name.
Same.
People, yeah. You know, your job, and you talk in the book, you used to be concerned about what happens to the entity after you exercise, and now you're just like, get out, you're gone, like poof, you know.
Yes.
And so you don't care about their existence after, and most times they just go away.
I mean, it sounds so mean when you say it that way.
But I mean, who wants to take care of a demon, though?
Well, that's the thing. So here's why. So in the beginning, you know, when you're spiritual, right, and you are part of that process, you want to see the best in everything, which I still like to think I do. But even entity, you're trying to see the best in it. So what I used to do is, in the very beginning of my practice, probably for the first year or so, I would do that thing where I was like, peace, love, and light to you, demon. You know what I mean? And just kind of try to transmute the energy and let it pass. So there's a portion of my process where back then, I don't do this anymore. Back then, I would be like, okay, I'm giving you this opportunity to leave before I do the rest of what I'm going to do. And a lot of the time, it would be like, oop, bye. Right? I even had a situation where that was caught on camera for a daytime talk show, where they were like, they literally went through and inspected my entire spirit room to make sure that was not bullshit. But they couldn't find a thing because that's what happened. Yeah. So the thing went out, right? But what was happening was I would see the same entity, not the same kind, the literal same entity come back on somebody else. And so I was like, oh no, we're not doing this because this is giving me a lot of work, like more work than I need since 10,000 exorcisms later. So I was like, no, we're not playing this game anymore. You don't listen. So house rules changed. So now when I work on people and they have attachment, I dissipate the energy completely. I don't allow it to continue to exist.
So doing that, it kind of makes you like the bad guy in terms of the demon world. Are you afraid of that demon energy coming to attack you, or are you afraid of life after death? If you go to a realm, these demons are just waiting to get their revenge on you.
No, but I'll tell you what they do. They do they do bring with them visitations. So I do get visitations. Visitations are like, not all the time, but every so often. And they used to be much more like clockwork, but I don't know. They've changed. The energy has changed. I don't know. They're just sick of me, I guess. It used to be like once a month. I used to call it like a bad moon, like it was a bad period. They would come like once a month, like clockwork, all through the night. And now it's just, I don't know. It just happens. But I'll get visitations, which are normally tricksters, what I call tricksters. They take on the form of something else, or ancient tricksters, which are not in the book, which are old tricksters, right? Who are more malevolent and moving up the scale. So it'll be like sundown, go to sleep, all through the night you'll get these visitations, and it'll be tricksters that are interested in, I don't know how to put it, like they're like moth to flame kind of thing. Like they're curious. They want to know. It's not an attachment, but they can be pretty malevolent, and it can be pretty terrifying in certain ways. Like I've had tricksters come to me that look like weird things. Like they'll come, okay, so this sounds absolutely stupid sounding. Like the stupid sounding ones were the most terrifying, honestly. I had one night. I'll never forget this. I have a cat named Luna, and she likes to sleep on the bed. So she and I were on the bed, and this was many years ago now. And at one point during the night, there was a visitation of this entity that came in that wasn't even, sometimes they don't even try to look like people, but most of the time they try to look like people. This one was like, no, fuck it. I'm not going to look like people. So it came in, and I don't know where it got this information. I don't know why it showed up this way. But you know those wacky balloon guys?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like.
Oh my God. Okay, they're creepy though. Like on their own, in full daylight, they are creepy.
It came right up to the bed, undulating up to
God.
the bed, and my cat Luna just hissed and hissed and hissed at this thing. And I was like, what the hell? And so that was like one of those ones that was like, okay, this is not pleasant. And then there was this other one, which might be in the book, not really a trickster, just a pass-through. So we do have entities that don't attach to anybody, and they just pass through, going from wherever they're from to wherever they're going next, like, you know, just going through. And some of them are the weirdest looking things I've ever seen, like weirder than the usual entities look to me. Like there's one, I called it like the Furby. It looks like, it was like this tall, and it had like big feet and like cotton candy looking body.
It's in the book.
Yeah, and like plasticky looking eyes, and just was like going through. And then there's like some that I called like the poof, which is just like like a dark cloud energy that's just poofing in and out and just going through, like just very random, strange, like whatever you can imagine. It's weirder than that, and they don't bother anybody. Can't tell if they're malevolent really or not. They don't feel great, but they're just going through.
Tricksters, if you're watching, come as Brad Pitt. Like that's how you can come to me. That's totally fine.
Exactly.
But let's talk about, because you detail very clearly, and you had these visions even as a little kid.
Yes, all my life.
The way that you see demons, because I've heard people say, oh, I feel the presence, or I see like an orb. You see these grotesque figures in every kind of detail. Can you talk a little bit about what it is you're actually seeing, and what you can see in pictures too?
Yes, so there are quite a few entities that we see over and over, a species of each, if you will. So they start with Clives, and Clives are, again, like I always say, I named all of these things myself. This is my handbook. This is literally my handbook, because I just keep journals of everything. And so I kept like notating when I would see something. So Clives are very common, and they work as amplifiers. So if you're sad, you're depressed. If you're angry, you have rage. Like so many people are walking around with Clives. Very easy to pick up, very easy to discard without ever knowing you had it, other than feeling like, oh, that felt like shit, and now I feel better.
Or I'm in a bad mood all of a sudden. I'm
yes,
grumpy.
and it lasts for a while.
Yeah.
And those look like face hugger brains. And I call them Clives because they look like Clive Barker drawings to me. Yeah, it's super scientific. Yeah. And then they go.
He would be
up,
so honored, by the way.
Maybe he knows.
Yep.
Just saying, can't out anything. But anyway, yeah. So it just goes up from there. So from there we have rates, which are attached to, unfortunately, sexual dysfunction of some kind, sexual attack of some kind, being exposed to something too early, and those are the ones that are sleep paralysis and night terrors, and they tend to look like. Let's see, what would be the best way to describe that? They are humanoid. So they look like, I don't know, the best way to describe that would be like Slender Man-ish. But there's female and male ones, which is very weird. And I don't know what that means. They just present one way or the other. It's very odd. And of course, yeah, night terrors, sleep paralysis, always rates. And then they go up from there to tricksters, which again will show themselves as anything. They'll what they do is they form a symbiotic relationship with their host. So they will pull literally something from your mind and present itself as that. So they can show up as deceased loved ones. They can show up as imaginary friends. Unfortunately, children get tricksters a lot. They can show up as, oh my gosh, archangels. Literally had someone who was like, I've had a genie with me for all of these years, and they're like in their 50s, and I'm like, okay. Maybe we should look at that a little bit deeper. And they've shown up to rock stars, many different rock stars, as the same demon, because that's what a lot of rock stars want to have. They show up as Baphomet.
It's like a glamorization.
Yes, that's what they do. It's glamour magic.
Yeah.
They just are like, look at me, I'm beautiful. Here, like, let me in. And tricksters also will show up, even in visitations for me. They'll try to show up oftentimes as something very innocuous, like this girl or this guy, just very like normal feeling stuff. And they don't feel great. So it takes a while for your brain to process that sometimes, because they'll show up like in the middle of the night and you'll be like, wait, what's happening?
Yeah.
Because why is this girl in a sweatshirt in my room? That's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just very random. And then you'll be processing how it feels, and all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, wait, that's what this is. So they do that. And then it goes into the next ones, which are mostly buildings, but not always buildings, because spaces can be possessed as well, which we don't ever see and we don't ever talk about, but it is true. They then hold space. So, we go to collectors, which like to be in a place of two things. Mass trauma. So somewhere where a mass trauma has happened or occurred.
Like an explosion or...
Yeah, everything. Unfortunately, there's a lot of schools I've been asked to do now, hotels, cruise ships, planes, like everything. You never know. It's just like a lot of places. So it either happened on the land or in the space itself. And those entities tend to like high traffic as well, because they can't feed off deceased people. They can only feed off living people. So what they do is they hold the souls of those who pass there, who don't want to pass on. It's not really stuck. They're just traumatized. And they'll hold them and then use them to scare the living to then feed. So it's a whole process with a collector.
And that was a very scary part of your book, because it's, we think of haunted houses, especially during Halloween season. We think haunted houses, and the way that you distinguish it, no, this is an actual location possession, and
Yes.
the trapped souls there. You went to a building where they were filming something, and there was
Yes.
such a level of trauma for it being a cattle butchery place, to
Yes.
the mob had a space there, and you were experiencing all of this in this darkness. I mean, and you had to go room by room by room.
You can't shortcut an exorcism. That's why
that
it's
makes
like...
But that's terrifying.
That brings up, I spent about a year in Tucson after we were in New York for 9/11, blah, 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 blah. Me and my now
Tucson, that's hell enough, girl.
I know, but it was post 9/11. So in the home, there was a room, and I would bartend, so I would come home late. So I would sleep in this room so I didn't wake up, my husband. And that room was always, for some reason, so much colder than every other room. My dreams would always be a little bit violent in that room. And once in a while, I would feel just something sitting at the edge of the bed. And now I'm getting a chill in the back of my head, because we later discovered when we went to paint that you could tell that there was a lock on the outside of this door, and you could see with the whatever that, I don't know what doors are, what that is, but that had been repeatedly maybe like forced to open, and there was a lock, formerly there. So yeah, it was something, and there was no reason, it's Arizona. There was no reason for this particular room to be as cold as it was all the time.
Well, and you also talk about in the book that when a location's possessed, it doesn't just stay there. It can outreach. It can remotely possess. You were going to do some work at Hotel Cecil, which we know in LA is like the most famed place here. And knowing what you were about to do, and you didn't get to do it because of COVID,
Yes.
Things started to happen in your everyday life. You're not even at that building.
Yes. So let me just preface that by saying that's a realm walker that holds that building. So a realm walker is what people consider the devil, as far as I can tell. But there's not one. There's several on the planet. They're not that common. They can hold people. Those are the movie-style exorcisms, and they can hold spaces. They prefer to hold spaces rather than people, because the only people that they really will hold, it's not what you see in movies. It's major world changers, because these are the most malevolent, most intelligent, and can do everything that every entity can do below them. So they're not going to go after somebody that wastes their time just to make a scene. Logically, that doesn't even make sense if you think about it. That's a waste of their time. So what they do a lot is hold major spaces, because what they like to do, is create darkness over a whole area. And it leaches. It does seep out from, like the Cecil, for example, outward to all of that area. And yeah, I did not get to do it because of COVID. And it's been very trying to try and get back in there since, because they've changed hands a lot.
Yeah, they're trying to
They've
revitalize
tried
it.
to do it so
Yeah.
many times, and it's not been successful. And it's crazy because, like, that is like my white whale, I guess. Right?
yeah.
I'm gonna get in there, and I'm gonna cleanse that space, because if given the opportunity to do that, it will change the dynamic of the entire downtown area. You know, and with that particular hotel, with that particular entity, it can, like, take over a mass of people at once. Like, it can do so much that other entities simply cannot. And it can call people to it like it does. And so when I was first on that entity's radar, because we've known each other a while now, since that book for sure, and I was getting closer to actually being able to exercise it at the time, I would be assaulted whenever I was in that area. So I would be in the area, and I still don't love going down there, because I'm like, either I'm getting in there or I'm not. I'm not going to waste my time.
Yeah.
So I remember one time I had to go down there. I was going to Clifton's, I think, which is quite close to there. And I was going for dinner. I don't remember the ins and outs of it, but when you're downtown, there's no parking, right? So you have to park in, like, a garage way over here and, like, walk over there. So I was walking over there, and obviously we have a lot of unhoused people in that area as well. And so I had people come up to me. It was one after the other, like almost every moment to get from the parking garage to Clifton's. Where it was one person who would say, he knows you're coming. And then another person who would say, you're not going to get in. And they would just keep the same thought process going and going and going.
Just passing along.
Yes.
That's so creepy.
Yeah, and that's what it can do. You know, it can do that, which is why you have, police who have investigated that place a million times for all the things that have happened there over and over and over again, and having it be like, accident, or, who knows? This didn't happen the way it happened. It's not their fault, but they are influenced.
Have you ever been overwhelmed in any of the exorcism? Just, this is too much for me. Maybe in your earlier years or anything. Just
yes, I actually had. It's crazy you asked that, because just to backstory this, because it's been on my mind for this whole year. I have a bunch of unpublished journals of case files, not 10,000 of them, that would be nuts. But, like, my hardest or most challenging or most interesting, or even sometimes my most touching, like the ones that affected me emotionally the most. And I like to keep track of them. So I probably have, I don't know exactly, I've never really counted, but I think it's like 125 or 150 out of all of those. And one of those is what you're asking, which we are in the process of potentially bringing to screen, because it's a wild story, because it did not look like it was as bad as it was. And, back in my, let's call it middle days, right? Not quite here, not quite beginning. I got a little cocky. I'm not going to lie. Like, I was like, anytime someone would ask me to come in and it was like worth my while, it was like, it's going to be 2 days to go into this space or 3 days to go into the space and get it done. And I can do that, no problem, 3-day weekend or whatever, just get it done. And I got, ahead of myself, I guess. And I assumed at that time that every entity that I would encounter would be something I've seen. I now know that that's not always the case. So, and since then have encountered a few entities that are very space related or region related or whatever. So I was asked to do this and I, it was one of these places. I mostly have to sign NDAs for places, because with places, not everybody wants haunted tourism.
100%.
A lot of places are like, we're a casino. We don't want people to know that you did this. Or like, we have to reopen in a week and we don't want people, like, we're this cute little Vermont bed and breakfast. We don't want people to know we're haunted, like stuff like that. So I often sign NDAs for spaces, and this was the case for this. So I cannot disclose where or what. But I will say that this was one of those places where it was a very old place that someone had bought, and they were like, we're renovating it. We're going to renovate it to look old school, but have all the amenities. And hey, guess what? We have to do that next week. And all of these workers have been in here and complaining, and some of them won't come back. And so, like, weird stuff has been happening. And, like, they didn't have, the person who bought it hadn't spent a lot of time in the place. So what did they know? Like, they were like, I just bought this cool place. I'm going to flip it, basically, for something new and exciting. But the workers were like, we won't go near this thing. So at one point, one of the workers got injured pretty badly. And that's when they contacted me and were like, hey, can you come in? Because we have to open or we're going to lose money. And we can't open like this. Like, nobody will finish the job. So I was like, yeah, one and done, no problem. Like, come in and do this. And it ended up being like one of the scariest 3 days I've ever experienced because, again, you can't judge a book by the cover. It just looked like a cute little old place halfway through renovations. And I was like, okay, I got to do this by myself. Like, let me do my thing because I don't like being responsible for people in case something happens. So I did that, and the entity that was in that space in particular was able to do a thing. So basically what it did is it was a space of mass trauma. There was a fire and a bunch of murders that had happened after because, hello, old buildings, weird stuff. And so a lot of people had died in the space. So I was like, okay, this is going to be a collector in my mind. That's not what it was. So what this entity was able to do that no other entities I've seen since or before was able to do was actually keep the possession going after the people died. So normally when you go into a space to clear for, let's say, a collector, you have all these deceased people who are traumatized. So you have to clear them first so the battery's gone. So normally what I do is I walk in, I have conversations with the deceased people. We usually talk about their trauma or why they're afraid to move forward, and then we help them along. And oftentimes, more often than not, they're like, oh, great, this is great. I don't want to really be here anymore. Cool. In this case, they were still like lunatic crazy from this entity. Like they were still under the entity's influence, just beyond just keeping them in the cycle. So I was being kind of I guess like assaulted, I guess, if you will, not just by the entity, but everybody else in the space. So I couldn't release them properly the way I normally do and then weaken the entity. I had to like work through all this. Wow. So, and in spaces also, one thing that you have to be very careful of, because spaces are much more dangerous than people, is that when an entity holds space, it holds the whole space. So that means that it can take the whole space down if it wants to. And oftentimes we've seen things like sinks coming off of walls, pipes coming down, fires starting, floods, like all kinds of weird stuff, electrical, all kinds of weird stuff that could hurt someone and also make people sick. Like it can send a lot of nausea and stuff through. So like people who are very susceptible, when they come in with me, often get nauseous, really nauseous. And that's why I just don't like being responsible for people's well-being, because it's like hard enough to do your own and get through there. So so it's very dangerous to do spaces. So in that particular space too, there was a lot of that because stuff was under renovation, and so mirrors would crash. They had like an old, I don't know exactly what it was. It wasn't a phonograph, but it was like an old record player from somewhere that would just play on its own. Like you would have so much stuff happen. Like, and by the time you'd go turn that off, there'd be something happening over here. And it was just like constant, like trying to keep you busy. Yeah. And it was one of those things where energetically it was very overwhelming. And I ended up being able to release the entity from the space, but not quite exorcise it fully. So it's like I still feel it around me sometimes. So so it's one of those, like, I'm looking over my shoulder every now and again.
I got your back.
Yeah. And I want to set the scene for your early years of exorcism. Even though you had experienced these entities as a kid because of family pressures and family non-acceptance, or you just didn't talk about it, you kind of hid these abilities until your 30s.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it came to you, but you didn't sit and read a handbook. You just knew what to do in terms of your first exorcism.
Kind of,
but it worked.
Yes.
How did you instinctively know what to do in terms of a ritual?
So instead of, once I figured out, okay, this is kind of my sight and my gift, because it did not feel that way for a very long time. It felt like, what the hell is this? Like, why is this happening to me? I had a situation where I could no longer suppress it. And once that happened, I had to figure out what my next step was here, because if I can't block it out at all, there has to be a purpose for this. I need to find a purpose in this. What is it? And so, instead of turning things off, I opened them up. Excuse me. And doing so, I realized, how to be whole, I guess. And part of that being whole for me was connecting to spirit, working with high beings, figuring that out. And so I never wanted to read any book about it because I thought that's influential. Like, I just don't want that. I don't want to do something in the way that is not authentic to me or authentic to the journey that I'm supposed to be on, helping people. So I sat down and said, okay, spirit, come on in now. Tell me what I'm supposed to do and how I'm supposed to do it. And so over time, we worked out a system. But in the beginning, it was a messy system because, yes, I knock on all the things. I'd like to think I have 100% success rate getting things out. But in the very beginning, I was talking to Spirit, and Spirit always likes to keep what I call a one-way vortex. So there's a specification on how you lay candles out to pull things out so that it's safe. And so I would do that, and I would put them on the floor and then kick them all over and start fires. So practical elements of exorcism I had to learn. And it's the things you don't see in movies, for sure. Like, you never see someone just kick a candle over and be like, oops.
My bad.
Yeah, so demons were not the problem. It was everything else. So the first time I had someone come who was nauseous, I was ill prepared for it. I didn't have any of the things for them to be sick. So they had to keep running out of the room for every 5 minutes. So now there's a system in place. I even know what entities bring more nausea and but it's a learning, you have to just throw yourself into it.
Now, the majority of exorcisms you do is in your safe space at your home.
Yes.
In fact, when you first got into doing this, you kept it secret. You were in the broom closet.
Yes.
Yeah, it was just word of mouth.
Yes.
For a very long time. Can you walk us through what I would expect if I were to come to you and say, I feel like I'm possessed, and you talk in your book, more than 80% of people are walking around with some form of...
Usually.
Yeah. What is the ritual? What should I expect?
So I try to make it as easy for people as possible because they're usually coming to me as a last resort. Mm. At least they were. Times are changing, but that's what it had been for many years. So they're already scared. They already don't know what to expect. They already think it's going to be something scary or weird
and
or
up
traumatizing.
until then, they're probably just skeptical, and that's why they're...
Sometimes they're pretty open, but they just thought it was this problem or that problem. And then they've gone through all those things and are like, okay, I still feel this way. So when people come in, the first thing I like to do is I like to sit them down and just talk to them. I like to talk to them about why they're there. It's the first thing I ask. Why did you want to do this? And oftentimes they'll say what I call branches. So they'll say branches. I have fertility issues. I'm blocked in my career. I been feeling a certain way. I have addiction issues I can't, deal with. Some kind of thing like that, when it's not oh my God, I know I'm possessed. A totally different thing. That's not an everyday occurrence. No. So they tell me the branch. I tell them the root. Here's why you can't move past this. It's because of what happened to you here. Let's talk about that. We're going to talk about that because that's the information I get from Spirit. So half the time when people come in, they think they're there for one thing, but they're really there for something they didn't even want to talk about.
And sometimes
right?
they don't. They still want to hide it from you. And
yes.
you're like, well, I know.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. People lie, but energy doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I'm reading. I'm reading the room. And then once we've established why they're there, we need to talk about what we're doing. So if there's entity attachment, then we talk about, okay, here's the entity. Here's what we're going to do today to get that out. If there is no entity attachment, we just talk about trauma removal. 9 times out of 10, we do both. Because if we're going to bother taking an entity out of someone, we need to also take out the energy signature that attracted that entity. So we want to move trauma out of the body. And when we do that, when I do that, I move it from what I call the body space to the spirit space. What that does is it allows energy to flow properly. So when we are holding a bunch of trauma energetically in the body, it works like a game of operation where energy has to flow around all of these tiny boxes. That inhibits flow. So when we take it out of the body and we move it to the spirit system, what happens is you don't forget it, you know. Again, we don't peace, love, and light it. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm about. You know, we don't do any of those things. We are simply allowing energy to flow. That's it. A side effect, though, of removing it from the body to the spirit system, a nice side effect, is that most people who experience, especially major traumas, have visceral reactions to memories. Their bodies lock up, you know. So they stuff it down. They push it down a lot because they don't want to experience that discomfort. When we move it to the spirit system, you have a less visceral reaction to those memories. Again, not because you changed your mind about it or feel differently about it, but literally because we moved it out. So all of those things are part of the process because I don't leave you dirty. We got to get you clean, right? So once we've established what we're doing, I walk people through what this is going to feel like. And the bigger an empath you are, the more you feel, right? So that could be rushes of the spine, hot and cold in places, pain pressure in places, tingling sensations throughout the body, lockups in the extremity. You could have emotions come up, coughing, sneezing come up, involuntary movements come up, obviously some nausea if that's where we are. All of those things are very normal. So it's hard to explain what you will experience during the process of that. Even people who have gone through the process have a very difficult time saying, this is how I felt. But it is very different than anything else. Because what I'm doing now, is I'm asking the high beings who I call in to essentially send their energy into the body to push that negative energy up so that I can grab it and take it out. So we do that in 3 rounds. There's a lot of certain burns and things that I do to raise vibration and frequency in the space and to also help cast things out. And mostly it's with my hands and the energy. And that's what it is. And so they can last, I mean, a normal one, cut and dry stuff, can last anywhere from as little as 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes if there's no attachment, to an hour and a half, unless it's something major.
And that energy, while it's still in the body, is it just generally in the body, or can it be held in specific places, like, you know, heart or head, or?
You're talking about the trauma?
Yeah.
It's usually
energy.
blocking certain areas.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so people who like hold it, there are like very high to severe empaths tend to hold their trauma in the back of their neck and shoulders. Other people like hold it in the core, tend to hold in the core lower back area. But some people hold it in joints. Some people hold it in different places. Like I've had a lot of people, you know, like trigger warning here. I've had a lot of people who have tried to commit suicide before, and maybe I don't know that when I start working on them, but I know that when I'm working on them because I know where they're holding the trauma.
Now, Rachel, are demons able to affix themselves to you?
I don't believe so. Back in the time when I started doing this, I would wear only protective jewelry, and I would wake up in the night and have it all off. So now I have, no secret there. So now I have tattoos, I have all kinds of things, but also I keep myself in a pretty high frequency place. So there's really no way they can, because when we work on ourselves and we stay high frequency, and again, that doesn't mean you don't have bad days or you don't have negative thoughts or you don't have, like, that's BS, whoever says that, because you know internet gurus tell you that shit all the time. That's not true. That's not life. Just generally speaking, trying to, you know, when something happens, you pull yourself out, you can get back on track, all of that stuff. When you are high frequency, there's nothing to feed on. So, you know, if there's nothing to feed on, there's no reason to be there. Visitations, yes. Trying to understand what I do, yes. Trying to understand why I see it, yes. They do that shit to me all the time. But also, a side note is if you are a severe empath, like the empathiest of empaths, sometimes you get a universal break from entity attachment too, because you're too, let's see, how to put this. Your mood is not stable enough. So, like, you get real high highs and real low lows.
Demons don't want to deal with all that drama. They're
They
like,
do
no,
not want your
going
drama.
there.
That is so true. They do not want your drama.
Like
Because
drama
they
queen.
just want to, like, easy feed. They don't want to deal with that shit.
Yeah.
So when it comes to vibration, because I believe in all of this, and I'm a bit, I think I'm a bit of a sensitive. I know when I'm vibrating higher at times than others.
Yes.
And I know when it's really feels really high, I have this tendency to want to numb it. Right,
Okay.
whether it's I take
That's
a
like the
dr-
worst
like,
thing that
it's
you
just-
could do, right?
Right, but it's just this sort of I can't explain it. Like I can't really articulate it. But
I'm going to
there's
tell you that I don't think that's what you mean. I think
Okay.
what you're saying is when you get sensitive to energies and energies are trying to come in, or you're like your mediumship is up or your psychic ability is up, you don't feel comfortable with that.
yes.
Yes. Yeah. But I will say that if you have mediumship capabilities, which you do, and you don't integrate them, it's a lot worse than if you do. Because people who have mediumship abilities who don't integrate, who are like, I'm going to close it all down. I don't want this shit. I hate this. The only thing that comes through are the most traumatized because they're pushy and aggressive. And it doesn't even mean they're trying to be scary, but oftentimes new mediums, like baby mediums, when they're just starting out, will be like, holy shit, that's really scary.
Yeah.
They're not trying to be scary, but they are traumatized and they sense that you can talk to them or help them or just even listen to them. It's not even about help most of the time. But like when you integrate your mediumship, you also get the non-traumatized and the non-pushy. So like all the ones that might be like respecting your free will and are cool and just waiting in the wings to talk to you, that's something you do want, you know? So when people are like, I have mediumship, but I hate it because every time something terrible happens and the scary thing happens, I'm like, that is exactly why you need to do it.
I love in your book, and this is what I tell people, is if they don't believe in what you see, if they don't believe in what you do, you say, it doesn't matter, I'm still going to do my job. Like, I still do what I
don't
need
care
to
at
do.
all.
You don't care if people don't believe in what you
Not
say.
at all.
But
I think that makes it scarier for people.
But if you strip away all of our assumptions of exorcism and demons, what you're really talking about is creating an environment of good energy.
Yes.
And so when you're talking about positive manifestation, surrounding yourself with positive people, trying to be a positive outlook, taking time to meditate, whether you believe in everything else or not, what's the harm in that?
Nothing, right? It's nothing. Don't be an asshole. You don't want entity attachment? Don't be an asshole. It's really very simple. People think that's like ridiculous, but that's the truth. The lower your frequency, the easier it is for entity to attach. And so why would you do that? Even again, you don't have to believe me. I'm not a religion. I'm not trying to convert people. I have another book that is going to come out with those unpublished case files, and I'm going to tell you something. People are not going to want to believe it. They're going to want to say that never happened 100,000 times over, and they will make all the YouTubes about that. Yeah. They will, I promise you, because it really creates cognitive dissonance in the way that they see the world. If they believe that this is true, then they also have to look at their own way of living and their behaviors, and people don't like change, and they don't like doing that.
Well, like you said, if you point out that, hey, you might love your religion, but that's not the only way to go, and your religion is probably working with this religion, I mean, that just challenges us on such norms. And look what we're dealing with politically and socially right now. Like, we're so affixed to our labels and our boxes, we can't conceive that there's some fluidity there.
Right, but there is.
In our last little chunk of time here, I want to talk about you personally.
Oh, goodness. All right.
Having this ability, having connection, you're not a psychic or a medium, but you have a very strong connection and communicate with the afterlife.
Yes.
How has this shaped your personal relationship? We know that you have a close relationship with spirit.
Sure.
Which is, I guess, for like the common man, that would be like a God figure or
It's
an
like
all
everything,
energy. Yes, everything under the sun. But how has this shaped your spirituality in terms of your thoughts of life after death, in terms of your thoughts of a heaven or a hell, or any type? You're working with these entities. Is there any one that you're like, yeah, I think that's for me?
Well, as far as afterlife goes, there's definitely afterlife. The energy does exist beyond, and there are just too many instances where that's been proven to me. I mean, there are times when deceased people, I think I might have just told you this in passing before, but I had a birthday party this year where we rented out a bar in Hollywood, and
I wasn't invited.
this was in March.
You should have known, girl.
So I invited a bunch of my friends because I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to have a party, you know? And I did some what we call platforming there, you know, where you see who's around deceased-wise and send, you know, present messages to people. And I had this one situation there where I was like very adamant that the person that was coming in was I can't remember now, so I'm just going to say this, a younger brother. I think it was a younger brother. And nobody was like, I have a younger brother that passed. And I had like a couple people who were like, I had an older brother who passed. And I was like, no, this is not them. This is not them. Like definitely not them. Because this person was like, it's not. And I was like, come on, like somebody. And so, you know, being in a bar in Hollywood, I was like, I did warn people, like we could get passerbys, you know, like people.
And
who are
Hollywood
just
has
coming
so much
by.
history,
I
too.
know, like
Yeah.
it could be not for anybody. So I was about to let it go. And then someone spoke up, and it was actually for the bartender.
Wow.
And it was this entire message for the bartender, and I had just met that day. So there's no way that could just happen. It just doesn't happen. And these were very specific messages. So, you know, definitely there is an afterlife. I think heaven and hell, I can't say. I feel like those are more constructs for people. When you pass and you don't, like, let's say you pass and you've just never apologized for things, never taken responsibility for things, and you've been kind of a shit. I know your passing is not easy. I will say that, because whether you take responsibility in life or death, you will be taking it. So all the people who leave this plane who have hurt people in major ways, you know, like our narcissists or, you know, parents who did this or whatever, when they pass, they are assigned a team of people who are like, we don't pass go until we look at all of these things. So that can be very scary, and I think what people would think is hell, you know, it's not pleasant. It doesn't look pleasant to me. I've unfortunately been privy to a couple of those, and it doesn't look pleasant to me, which is why, again, you know, if you're being an asshole, you really should do something about it.
It's a hell of your own making.
Yes, for sure it is.
Now, why does spirit allow possession? Why does spirit allow possession in children and the elderly that are not able to kind of defend for themselves?
I mean, spirit doesn't really have anything to do with it, unfortunately. So the way high beings work is they care very much about free will. So, like, for example, I teach people on my Instagram and TikTok to do my 30-day connection to spirit. It's all free. It's all
Check her
up
out
there.
every day on Instagram, by the way. I swear by it. Yeah.
It's up there for free, you know,
Yeah.
and it helps raise your vibration. It helps if you think you have attachment. It helps you release attachment over time. Like, it does a lot of good for you. It opens up your abilities, all kinds of stuff. 5 minutes a day, very easy. Every time I post about it, like, I could yawn about this. Every time I post about it, somebody in the comments who is like not even a follower, just somebody random who found it, is like, well, this is opening you up to bad spirits, and this is opening you up to bad things.
That's the assumption.
That's the
You play with the Ouija
assumption.
board, your house is going to be haunted, you're going to get a demon.
Well, the Ouija board is just a tool, but in this case, because we do ask spirit to come into the body, we're asking spirit to come into the body
I
and
was going to
cleanse
ask you
things
about
out.
that.
So, but think about this. Like, really think about this, okay? Anything that is negative, that is wanting to feed from your energy, that is wanting to take from you, would rather you be very unconscious of them. It's not as flashy as you think possession looks all the time. It's not flashy at all because they don't want you knowing. They want you to be unconscious of their existence and go along with your business, right?
And keep feeding them.
That's how it works. high beings respect your free will. Low beings do not. They don't need your permission. They don't need you asking for them to enter your body. They don't need any of that. But of course, high beings who want to help you, they wait for you to ask. They wait for you to be like, oh, okay, it's time for me to come in. Hell yeah, I'll come in. You know? But they respect you. So they're not going to just do that without you asking. The only times that they might do that for you is if, God forbid, you are in an accident of some kind and it is absolutely not in the record for it to be your time, they will step in and help you. And you'll know there are times when people do show that, like they'll say stories about, like, I swear someone pulled me out of the car or moved me in a different direction, or I thought I saw something and that's why I'm alive. They will do that, but that's more scheduling, if you will, than, you know.
Yeah. Because you full on answered a question, because I was looking at the 30-day, the cleanse, and I thought the thing that made me uncomfortable was the idea of inviting something in, but that you cleared that up.
You can't.
Well,
you really can't.
But I have to tell you, because you gave some advice of certain herbs and certain things to fill in your house,
Yes.
and me being all excited about this, I went and I got the blue lotus, I got the frankincense, I got the white sage, and the minute I started doing that, and I started talking to spirit, and I'm a skeptic, just to be very clear. Like I want to believe, but I probably don't, even though I've experienced a lot. The minute I started doing that, I had some of the worst luck I've ever had every single day, to the point like even my kitchen exploded. And then the minute I stopped doing it, I felt like this weight was gone, and I felt this total peace.
I told you not to try cooking.
Girl, I will never try cooking. Like, I have shoes in my refrigerator. But it was so weird because it was the exact opposite, and it freaked me out so much that I haven't even attempted to get back into it at all because it was so challenging.
But here's what you're not taking in. What that was actually doing was moving everything to the surface to get it out.
But my kitchen exploded.
But the kitchen was going to explode. This is
Okay.
the thing.
Well,
so what all those, so when you're burning different blends for different things,
Yeah.
but that particular blend, we're doing a get it out blend. That's a get it out blend. So we're asking the universe energetically, when we do that, whatever negative shit that's going to happen to me, get it out.
Mhm.
So it speeds up the timeline.
Just gotta buckle in.
I mean, this is not
It's
for
like a
the
diet.
faint
It's
of
like the
heart.
first 5 days of a diet. Trust me, I've
It
been
is,
there.
yeah. It's like you did a physical cleanse, because it's not for the faint of heart. Like everything that we do, you got to go in going, okay, this is going to be a fucking journey. You know, like even when people come to me, I give them homework.
Yeah.
Because once we get you clean, it is up to you to keep that going. I'm not going to have you come back in a month and say, oops, look what happened to me because you went back and did all the same shit. And I've had clients, not a lot, thank God, but I've had clients in the past where they're like, you know, they kind of want to be like, told you so's. They want to think that their shit is bigger than anybody's.
Yeah.
And so they'd rather be right about that than be clean or healthy. So they'll come and do an exorcism, they'll leave, go out and do all the same shit, never do the homework, never do anything, and then be like, see, I told you this wasn't going to work. And it's like, well, of course it didn't work.
And you have clear steps for the 3 days after. You need to be as pure as you can. No alcohol, certain types of food, and
Yeah, I mean,
you have to do your homework.
It differs person to person too.
Yeah.
Like some people don't even need that. Some people are like, I'll just go about my business and they're fine. But it's like, what we really need to do is make sure that you are keeping yourself clean, because even if we take everything out of you, if you go back into the world and you decide you're just going to go do the same shit over and over again, that's how you attracted things in the first place. Why don't you want to change that?
It's like spiritual rehab. If you don't do the steps when you're out of rehab, you're
Yeah.
just gonna go back. I want to go back to you personally. Again, because you talked about this, you had an amazing article come out in Nylon. Your article with Metrosource magazine is coming out next week.
Yay.
We know that there's projects like screen projects, a second book. You're constantly asked about this. Do you ever feel overshadowed as the exorcist, overshadowed by that role over than Rachel Stavis, the person?
Ooh, that's tough. You know, I think at this point, I don't really know where one ends and one begins. I think, in the beginning, it was weird because I was also still a writer and trying to do that work and trying to kind of be under the radar for so many
Fans of
things.
Tomb Raider, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Backstory.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah.
But yeah, like, I feel like I was trying to distinguish myself from, in two different ways. And to be fair with you, that didn't work for me. I think that was still me trying not to be fully integrated. I mean, really, I was still very much, I think, under the radar until basically this year. Like this year is when
really blown up.
things started to explode for me a bit, and now it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And more people are knowing, because I was very content not to. I was very content to just be like in my little spirit room doing my thing and working on 4 people a month. And now we have like 4,600 people on a wait list. So it's not the same at all. And I think back then I was very much in like you said, kind of being labeled like, this is one side of me, this is another side of me. But the reality is that that's not true.
But are you able to put like sweats on and
all the time,
and like go to the bar and have a crazy drunk night? I mean,
yes.
So I have to tell
Nothing's
you,
going to stop me from doing that.
because you're like one of the coolest women I've ever met, and I'm just like, I want to hang out with her. I want to go to the Abbey with her. Like, I want to,
I haven't been in so long.
We're gonna take you. But then I meet you, and it's a little intimidating. I'm just being honest with you, because you have this energy, you have this story, and it's hard not to separate that from. Well, Rachel's still a person too. Like
that is hard for people.
Yeah.
I think it's harder for other people than it is me, and I do realize when I walk into a room, I have a presence with me. That's very clear. Like a lot of people have told me that, like, because I walk in with a lot of high beings, and so that's like intimidating.
But it's like that cool chick that walked in high school, like, with the music playing and it's like slow mo. Like, that's what I get from you.
I mean, I'll take it. That wasn't my high school experience, so I'll take that now. But yeah, no. But I feel like there's truth to that, but there's also, I am still a person. Like, I'm still having a human life right now, and so definitely I'm in sweats, and definitely I'm going out to the bar, and definitely I'm also like watching my TV and watching my stories and just like, having a little whatever at the end of the day. But yeah, no, I don't know what it's like from the other side. So I can only speak from me, and I feel like I am just a person. I know, like, I have a lot of friends who have had it for a very long time that are still kind of like, every now and again they're like, but you're Buffy though. And I'm like, I guess, but I don't really, I don't think about that.
But it is the question, is it easy to make friends? And to talk a little bit more personally as well, congratulations, you got married this last year. You kind of came out of a different closet, kind of. Tony, do we have some of the wedding pics? Fairy tale wedding in a certain genre, by the way. You got married in Vegas, right?
We got married in a ghost town in Vegas.
In a ghost town in
Vegas.
Yeah. But you met your wife, and this is the first year of being married.
Yes, first few months.
What is the dating period like? Because I can't imagine dating an exorcist. Are you like, oh, honey, you have something here? And they're like, oh, is it spaghetti sauce? And she's like, no, it's a demon.
Yes. Honestly, first of all, I started making, this is so, oh my God. This is what alcohol does, right?
Spill the tea, girl. Have another sip.
When I got divorced last time, I was like, I'm not even going to date anyone who hasn't come to see me as a client. Like, I'm just not even going to do it, because I was like, I just don't want to date anyone who's got stuff, and then I have to pretend they don't have stuff, and then like act like normal. I just don't want to deal with it. I'm not going to deal with it. So I didn't.
Your first exorcism was actually on an ex, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it's like that's become kind of a staple for me now. But dating was terrible.
Oh my God! Look how gorgeous. I'm sorry. That is just gorgeous.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time. We had fun. And it was very small. We only had like 25 people.
So she was a past client then?
Yes. And the weird thing is, so we were all mutual friends as well. So we kind of met through mutual friends, and all of my mutual friends, I think, have been clients, weirdly enough. But yeah, so we had met, and she had been a client of mine like 2 years before we actually like met again, and I didn't remember it at all, and neither did she. Like, I remembered that she came, and so did she, but we don't remember the cleansing at all.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it hard for her to deal with your life is kind of given to other people?
Yes, that's true.
There's weird things that happen at the house,
Oh my
in your
God,
bed
all the time.
Is it hard? I mean, and I know it's the first year, so you're still feeling things out. But
But we've been together a while.
Okay.
I think, it's weird. What's weird is having the conversation. So, like, first dating people, that's the conversation. So it's not private information this is what I do, and certainly not among friends. I mean, they definitely know what I did, even then. So the conversation becomes like, listen, it's what you were saying. It's like there's an expectation of me to be something. But in my off time, I'm not going to be that.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be with people who are constantly asking me to do work on them, or constantly, about this and only this, or expecting me to be on a pedestal for something. That's never going to happen. And I'm also kind of a bossy bitch. I'm going to be honest, like I am. Because I don't have time for bullshit. Like I really, really,
you really don't have the time.
I don't. And so when I started dating again after having like exes where I was just like, Jesus Christ, I was like, I'm never going to put myself through that process again. Like I can't be somebody's constant caretaker emotionally and energetically anymore. I have to start putting that back into the well. And so I think when I met my partner now, I would dare say, in a much more selfish place, because I had walls up. I think because I was like, I need you to be okay with not that part of me. And I also need you to be okay with the fact that I have energetic fallout a lot from working on so many people. And those days I might not be able to move. And so I might need caretaking. And if that's not okay with you, then this doesn't continue, But honestly, she's great. Like, she is unfazed. Unfazed by what I do. Unfazed by weird stuff that happens. Like, it's so natural and normal now. And, like, even unfazed when I'm, like, literally, I'm ordering all the food. I can't move. Like, I'm just not doing anything. I'm literally just watching horror movies all day on this couch.
I love that you watch horror films, and it's like, girl, did you ever get enough?
Honestly, it helps me process.
So when car dealership guy shows up, she's like, get out of here.
That's funny, though, and it kind of feeds into, like the Ghostbuster villain, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Like, some of the funny things can be the most horrific. It's how it affects you.
But it's also the feeling.
Yeah.
Because I teach people often, especially when they're opening up, like high empaths, for example, and severe empaths, they get flustered in crowds, or they get anxious, or they get overwhelmed very easily, and it's because of other people's energies. So they'll be like, well, I don't know how to tell what's my energy and what's somebody else's energy. So we go through the process of teaching them how to tell what their energy is versus somebody else's. And even then, what'll happen is when an empath's body is hit by strong energy from someone else, they've had a day, whatever that day is, good, bad, ugly, it doesn't matter. People send out what I call like little fireballs of energy, and it'll hit an empath's body. And when it hits the empath's body, they'll lock up, because an empath's body doesn't know what to do with that, but they feel it. They feel it. So they're like, what the hell is this? And often we'll go into anxiety spirals or panic attacks because of it, right? So, when we talk about other people's energies, it's like we have to feel underneath. Because once they start going, okay, that's not my energy, cool, I'm definitely not going to spiral. Now I have to feel like, is this a good energy that did they have a good day or did they have a bad day? Because it's not about how my body's reacting. That's just sending the signal that there's energy. I have to go, oh, let me check in with spirit and see what that is, Same with entities, or even deceased people for that matter. They can present a certain way, but it's all about the energy. How does it feel? That's the most important part.
Rachel, we've talked about the work that you've done with 10,000 cases. We know how busy you are. You can't possibly heal everybody. Even if you worked every hour, 24/7, there's just no way. So why do you think you were chosen to have this power? And knowing that you can't help everybody in the nation, what kind of legacy do you want to build from here on out?
I don't know exactly why I was chosen for this, but I feel like I've done it many lifetimes. So I just think it's something I always do, And I think there's an interesting dynamic to it that people don't think about when they think about priests, let's say, right? Because this is a totally different thing. But I think there's an element of this work that needs to be maternal. And I think like I'm very empathic that way. Like weirdly, I have no children, but I'm very maternal, and I think I have no children for a reason because I've been everybody's mom.
I was gonna say.
You know, so I think there's a lot of that to it because I think real healing, there has to be some kind of empathic energy that goes with it. It can't just be like throwing the holy water and, you know, like you have to be holding space. You have to be holding space for someone to make it safe for them to release things, right? Because that's what it's about, making it safe enough for someone to say, I'm ready to let go of this thing. So that's why I think, you know, I'm doing it. And as far as helping everyone, Lord knows I cannot, but I think that's why I've been put in the path of a lot of amazing executives and my manager and like a lot of good people. I know this sounds really weird because it's Hollywood and that's not what you expect to hear because there's also a lot of terrible people. But like my manager, Kaylee Marsh, is amazing and she is so helpful. And like her goal when she met me, because we met as friends, was like, actually, wait, these things are really helpful to people. Like more people should hear about this. We should be like looking at those journals and looking at that information and sharing it with people. And executives that I've met that I'm now working with, they really feel the same way. Like they're like, I feel like people need to hear about this kind of trauma healing. I feel like we need to show this in, you know, a scripted way. You know, someone going through this process or someone dealing with something. How do we show that to people in a way that's palatable, but also gets that message across? Because I never wanted to make things in which the message was lost. And so I've always kind of, this is why it's taken me so long, because I've really stuck to my guns about like everything has to be authentic in terms of, it doesn't, you know, not necessarily this has to be a real story, but it has to be authentically shown how people are dealing with these things in the world, you know, because we're dealing with these things in the world. And there are sometimes things that nobody wants to show on screen that people are dealing with, but that's the reality of life. And so I've been very fortunate to meet people who are very like-minded at this time, who we're moving forward with in all of these ways that are like, actually, yeah, let's show this. Let's do it.
100%. We know that there's been an influx of ghost hunting shows for the past, you know, decade. We know there's a lot of medium shows out there, and I think it's very flashy, and sometimes it can get very emotional. But to your point, sometimes I can tell the edits are just flashy for an audience, and it doesn't come from a real place because coming from a real place can take time.
Yes.
And it's not always, you know, oh my God, you know, this mirror flew off the wall. It's not always that. It's dealing with our internal vibrations. Something you wrote in the book, which I instituted in my life, and it's changed.
Yay.
It's like who you surround yourself. So it's like, yes, we can raise our higher vibrations, but if we're constantly around people that are draining us or they're not to a certain level, it can bring us down.
Yes, very much.
So I've had a hard look at people in my own life, and I've made some adjustments, and I have to tell you, it's like a weight has been lifted off.
Absolutely. And we do this a lot, especially if you're an empathic person, which you are. Like, empathic people want to help, and they want to be of service to others. So they'll oftentimes have people around them that are of a low frequency or low vibration that are looking for help.
We want to be the saviors.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But to your own detriment, right? Yeah. So you'll be around people that are like narcissists, for example, love empaths because they love to take, and empaths love to give until they can't and they bled out, right? But it's terrible for an empathic person to be in a situation like that because they'll never get that reciprocated, and that is something empaths want, right? They do eventually want that reciprocated or seen, right? Seen. They want to be seen in that way. And so if you look at it, like if you are you, and let's say your baseline frequency is like a 6, why the fuck are you going out with people who are 4s where you have to lower your own vibration just to be around them because they're not rising to your occasion? Instead, we want to be around people who will rise to your occasion. We expect people to rise to your occasion. I expect people to rise to my occasion.
I think this happens a lot in the queer community because we come from not being accepted, not having that fellowship. And so we tend to find fellowship in the nightlife, in vodka or whatever. And we realize these people are not here for the full journey. They're here for the good time.
Right. Oh, it's very superficial.
Yes, yes. I mean, that's sweetheart. You know.
Absolutely. I mean, my relationship with being behind a bar, you know, first and foremost, my career is, you know, I'm an actor. But, you know, I have to pay my bills, and my relationship with bartending has changed a lot over the years because it is this this drawing of my energy and having to, maintain my vibration all the time, and it becomes very, very exhausting, and it makes me a little resentful of people who are coming to give me money, and I get it, but I'm like
I don't need your problems. I don't need you making a mess at my bar.
I find myself wanting to hide a lot.
I know. It's very hard to. There's some shielding exercises that you could be doing that would be helpful to you, like how empaths kind of push that energy out, because empaths, like I say, like they love to take people's energy in. So we're picking it up like sponges,
What if you're a narcissist and an empath at the same time?
That's sad times.
I do have a personal question.
Okay.
I have suffered from horrible, horrible insomnia. And when I say horrible insomnia, it's no joke. It's not like, I have a few restless nights. I'm talking about if I get 4 hours a night. It happened ever since my mom's passing almost over a year ago.
Okay.
They have tried me on every medication, melatonin, CBD, anything that you can imagine, I have tried. Nothing has worked. Could that be a presence of like a demon or some kind of entity that's preventing that?
Yes, and also you talk a lot about night terrors and sleep paralysis. So I mean, I think a cleansing would be helpful for sure. And the 30-day connection.
All right, because it's weird that medication has no effect.
I mean, it's worth pursuing.
Yeah.
That's what I like to say about all of this, right? My work is not exclusionary to, physical health, mental health, none of that stuff. It's holistic. This is all holistic. So it works together. It's not separate, like we need to make sure all of us is working,
Yeah.
It's spiritual wellness. I mean, that's how Nylon put it. It's spiritual wellness, and I do think that's really what it is. It's a wellness, just like everything else.
This has been, I can't believe we went so far over. I'm just like, wait, what?
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And we got so many other questions. I mean, I guess we're going to have to do it like a part 2. But it is so fascinating. And again, what I have to reiterate to our listeners, at the end of everything, you just talk about living a positive life.
Yes.
And there's no harm in doing that and instituting certain things. Whether you believe in religion, whether you believe in demons, whether you believe in whatever, it just helps.
It just helps. Why not? Why not try it and see for yourself?
Yeah. Do you have any final question?
No. I'm going to take a lot home with me from this, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And there's so much in here, like spinning and stewing, that
It takes a minute.
I'm gonna go home and maybe light up a little and just decompress and think. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Of course.
And I encourage everybody to get Sister of Darkness. I ordered it on Amazon, and they sent it the very next day, and then I read it that same day. I read it within 3 hours. It was captivating, and again, it just teaches how to live a positive life, and it's fascinating. Can't wait for the other book to come out. Yeah.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah. Rachel, where do you want people to find and follow you?
I'm at Instagram, RH Stavis, just my name, and TikTok. I don't know what I'm doing there, but I try. I try.
Also, read her article that just came out with Nylon Magazine. Also, next week, her interview with me, actually, with Metrosource Magazine comes out, and that's an in-depth chat, so you can get that nationwide on Stance or at metrosource.com. Michael, where can people find and follow you?
At my house, Michael Vega. Michael Vega, actor on Instagram, Michael Vega. That's it. Pretty
Perfect.
much. Yeah, just Google it.
All right.
I'm kidding.
And happy Halloween season. You've talked that this season, like literally the veil is thin.
Yes.
So it's not just a made up, like, we're in spooky season. It's for real.
It's for real. And I'm going to be posting things on Instagram like all month long about how to communicate with deceased loved ones.
Yeah. Now's the time. It's the time. That's all, folks. It's always a grab bag of fun here at On the Rocks. Big thank you to our engineer and station owner, Tony Sweet. Oh, you don't need a whistle for yourself. He did a whistle for himself. Whatever. Taylor Armstrong from Real Housewives of OC in Beverly Hills is coming on. Michael Verratti, who's a writer and producer of all things horror, including the Boulet Brothers' Dragula, is coming on to celebrate Halloween season. Please like, share, subscribe so we can continue bringing this fabulous programming coming your way for free. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, stay sexy, stay high vibration, by the way. And if you drink, stay tipsy.
This has been another episode of On the Rocks. Tweet me and slide into my DMs on Twitter and Instagram at On the Rocks On Air. Find everything On the Rocks for free at OnTheRocksRadioshow.com. Subscribe, like, review, and share. Until next week, stay fabulous.